whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello.
Yo, let's
Hey,
get
good
it going.
afternoon. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, that's a very pleasant welcome from you all. Good to have you. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, that's a horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Is that the one that 10th man is rising over?
You can't rise over something non-physical debunked in 2020 as Earth curve edge.
Ah, but you can think of it like you could.
Nah, you can stay at the same height. If anything, you can be higher. If you imagine an aeroplane disappearing into the distance, that's definitely above you. But it can disappear, what, behind the horizon is above you.
No way, the horizon has an address.
It's got a postcode. Any evidence of axial rotation?
Hang on.
Oh, here we go.
Hang on.
I was waiting
He's
for you
right.
to respond.
It does have an address. It's 1.22 times
Exactly.
the observer's height in feet. It must be geometric. It must be physical, and it does have a accent. What do you call it? Address. And that address keeps to be changing all the time. Chocolate. What can cause that?
In case there's
Not a
anyone's
very
not,
good address there.
in case anyone's not picking up what 10th man's putting down, he's talking about Earth curve having a physical limitation to your view as a hill getting in the way. Now, all of this is not the case. We've debunked all of this, but that is what it is claimed to be. All he's doing with his jovial manner is laying down the actual globe Earth rhetoric. Those are literal globe Earth claims. That is to say that the horizon is a physical hill at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet that blocks your view as per a hill in the way. Nuts.
Below surface level.
And
Below,
it might sound
below
like
the
I'm
level of the
joking.
surface in the maths. Yes, that's correct, John.
It might sound like I'm joking when I say it's an address, but I mean, they're literally telling you that an optical phenomenon has a specific place, right? That place where boats are supposed to be going over it, that's supposed to be a place.
It's below surface level, Chocolate. I wouldn't even pay attention to that nonsense.
Oh, man.
Well, now Chocolate's point is very strong, but I'll let Brian go first.
Well, no, I was going to come in just before John did a few minutes ago. Technically, their claim officially has never been that the horizon is geometric. Officially, it's always been that the horizon is always refracted. So not geometric, always just optical. So it doesn't matter whether you see the horizon appearing to block something in the distance. It doesn't matter what the reason is, because it's not a physical thing. It's just an optical phenomenon, and that's official even within heliocentrism. So there's nothing to worry about.
The refracted
Well, that's
horizon is below surface level as well.
Yes. And so John's got a point.
The marked with an X labelled horizon physical geometric limitation to your view, aka a hill, alluded to be blocking boats and having buildings obscured by it, is actually marked in the maths at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet below surface level. So as much as the official rhetoric is to say that it's a refracted non-geometric position, the geometry and the assertion that X marks the spot, here's your Earth curve edge horizon, is definitely laid down in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Their geometric, their geometry is a back engineering of perspective. That is exactly where that comes from. But the problem is they can't, within their maths, they can show how Polaris would appear to drop for an observer if they went backwards down over a curved Earth. But in reality, all they can show you is someone going back horizontally and a Polaris appearing to drop due to perspective. So they can mathematically explain why something like Polaris would appear to drop as you move away from it due south. But in reality, you're not moving down over a curve. You're going in a horizontal, and Polaris is dropping due to perspective, because within their maths, there is no perspective taken into account. So everything has to be Earth curve. It's either to do with the rotation, rotating you away and down away from a celestial body, or you literally moving away from or closer to a celestial body over a curve. So there's no perspective involved. That does not exist in heliocentrism.
Correct. It's in an orthographic view that shows how, with you and the target, in this case Polaris, as you rotate the diagram on a spherical surface, it would move down with respect to your viewing angle. But that's not a perspective inclusive view. But when you say Polaris does drop towards the horizon because of perspective, I don't like that phraseology. I've got to be honest, Brian. In line with the
Hold on.
effects of perspective, I would go along with, just to be not being pedantic, but in the same way, what's Polaris for you to assert that it is doing that in line with perspective is how I'd phrase it, as opposed to it is because of perspective, which would imply physicality to Polaris, and I don't know what it is.
Well, perspective doesn't require physicality; just requires a consistent point.
Well, hold on. I'm confused about something, Brian. You said that their maps have no perspective, right? And I seem to recall, like, when we first got into this being made fun of, they even made it, what do they call it? Perspective? But that's funny, though, right? Because that address that we were talking about before, when that address was placed into a specific argument, after that, we started getting rebuttals of, oh, but you guys are forgetting about perspective. How does that work? How did we forget about perspective?
We didn't.
when
It's
literally
projection.
That was our argument.
Yeah, we didn't. So in the Earth curve maths, any target that you're arguing about is going to be given to you in its mathematics in its feet and inches or centimeters and meters value. And that won't change with distance. So when they tell us, or did back in 2019, oh, you're forgetting about perspective. Oh, really? So do you want to show me within the begging the question proof of anything? Perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator and its orthographic representation of the world and you viewing it in the same frame, where your perspective lies, given that the target doesn't change in size regardless of distance. If you're looking at a 100-foot building, you're looking at a 100-foot building at 1,000 miles. Yeah, it's still 100 foot. But would it not be too small to see? That's perspective. At 1,000 miles. But in your maths, it's still 100 foot. Now, you see, we have this thing called angular size. That is perspective. And you don't have that account in begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculators, where they assert that a 10-foot wall is just a 10-foot wall regardless of the distance. Makes no odds that a 10-foot wall at 1,000,000 miles away cannot be viewed because it's too small. Because in their curve calculator, the only reason anything disappears ever is because of the physical geometry of an Earth curve hill getting in the way.
Well, let me throw this at the audience, especially for people who are brand new, or even if you know people who are totally brand new or naive to the topic. Most people, and I was told this as I grew up, and I heard this on television and different places, that the horizon, when you're standing at the shore, with an average height of 5.5 to 6 feet, a 6-foot eye height, let's just say, right? So your eye height is 6 feet above the water that's at the shore of the beach or whatever. That 3 miles away, right, is where you will see Earth curve. Now it just happens, right, that you're told that you'll see a boat sail to there and start to disappear at 3 miles away. What they don't tell you is 6 feet at 3 miles away will have an angular size of 0.02 degrees. So that means the 0.02 degrees is the angular resolution limit, the average angular resolution limit for the human eye. That means that at 3 miles away, anything that is 6 feet off of that water, you won't be able to see, because that angle will be too small for you to differentiate. So that will be the start of your horizon. So is it Earth curve? Is that the reason why a boat starts to disappear, the bottom of a boat starts to disappear, or a whole boat, if it's only a small boat, starts to disappear 2 or 3 miles away, or is it to do with the angular resolution limit?
It's to do with the angular resolution limit, and it's on screen now with the Rayleigh criterion. So what you're talking about is the diffraction limit on screen, unresolved. I think it says it's too small for me to read, but I'm pretty sure it says unresolved. And then you've got the Rayleigh criterion in the middle, the point of the angular limitation, where it starts to obscure from view, where in terms of what happens in a camera, what was formerly 2 defined pixels blur together, so you can't distinguish between the two. So when I give the example of brick at 1 mile being able to be resolved by your eye, in other words, about a mile away, you stick a brick on a hill, and you go, can you see the brick? Yeah, I can just about make it out. And you go, all right, okay, let's move that same brick 5 miles away. What happens? Well, eventually it disappears from view because the angle is too limited for the aperture of your eye to resolve it. So it disappears into the distance at the horizon. Has it gone over any edge? No. It's just too small to see. Okay. What happens if you then build a 100-story building on top of that brick? Can you see the building at 5 miles? Yeah, you absolutely can. What about the brick at the bottom? No, the angle's still too small. It's the same distance and still disappeared from view due to angular limitations against the deck, which limits the angle of your view. So you can see the bricks above it because of a wider angle, but you can't see the brick at the bottom regardless of how much you try because it's too small to see at the bottom with a limited angle. But they call that effect Earth curve. What do? They turn the entire view side on so that you can see both the building given in a feet and inches or meters value so it won't alter with distance. And then they say, check it out, the 100-foot building is missing 8 inches from the bottom. Exactly as per the curve that we're going to predict is the reason when we see the side of our own head and the building in the same frame in the maths. Hey, Adam.
Already got him, Adam.
It's been a while since. Sorry, Adam.
Go on, Chocolate. I'll go after.
I was just going to say, it's been a while since we had somebody come in and tell us how all about how we see the side of our head.
The
Been a
last
while.
guy was that guy. The last guy was the one that said, "I'm telling you, I've had this experience."
We're like, you actually saw the side of your own head? No. But I have an experience.
Got an
Is
interesting
that-
request.
Nathan,
Just before you do it, shout out to Gold Sky Beats. He says tectonic plates on the Gleason's map. Can can the panel do it? Yeah, we could talk about that. Absolutely. Thank you very much for the super chat. Also, shout out to Flat Earth Travolta, who's donated 5 memberships. So go and check it out. If you want to become a member, Flat Earth Travolta's your man. However you go about doing that, I still don't know. But thank you very much, Flat Earth Travolta. Really appreciate it. Right, Brian, go ahead.
yeah. Sorry, Ted. You want to say something?
No, you just fed
No,
back a
go
little bit.
finish.
Okay.
Go finish,
Yeah,
Brian.
just a brick, let's say your average brick, let's just say, would be about 0.4 to 0.5 of a foot. Now, at 1 mile away, the angular resolution, the angular size of that brick, of a 0.4 of a foot brick, is 0.004. So it's way under. Like you saying, well, a brick a mile away. Yeah, I see that brick. You won't. You won't see that brick a mile away.
I know. Do you not think I know that? It's just because
know
if you
that, I'm
lead
just saying for
somebody,
the
if you
audience.
lead a globe earther and just say, well, let's say we're going to put the brick at 1,000 yards. Can you see the brick? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can see the brick. And so you go on until you get to the point where, not sure about a mile. If you just say, let's just assume for the sake of example that we can see the brick at a mile, you know, there could be some ambiguity at that point. You could say, oh, I'm not 100% sure that the maths would work. You go, oh, okay, but that's fine. Let's just say for the sake of the discussion that you can see the brick at a mile. Okay. Once you've got that easy concession to get, because it's just for the sake of example, nobody in their right mind would suggest that you can still see a brick at 5 miles away. It's absolutely absurd. So at that point, everybody says, yeah, the brick's gone. And no Earth curve's been discussed. But the minute I stack the rest of the bricks on top of it at 5 miles and you can see that skyscraper, you still have to accept that it's disappeared from the bottom up, even though Brian's absolutely right. It wouldn't be at a mile with a brick. It'd be a lot damn closer than that. But yes, you're absolutely right, Brian.
Well, a lot of the here in Ireland, when I was working with blocks, a lot of the blocks were 18 inches long and 12 inches high. That means 2 blocks stacked on top of each other will be 2 feet. So that is like you're talking about 4 to 5 bricks. Now, at 1 mile away, that 2 feet has an angular resolution limit of 0.021. So that means you wouldn't even see those 2 bricks at a mile away. So, I mean, people just, I don't know, they just don't want to accept, that this stuff is not part of the globe's maths. and they don't want to accept that they don't want to accept it's not part of the maths, and they don't want to accept that because it's not part of the maths that you can't ignore it. You know, it's bizarre.
Well, it leads to some crazy assertions on their part against us, which is like assertions that, you know, if it wasn't for Earth curve, you'd see New York from Ireland. You're like, are you absolutely insane? Have you no concept? Are you Dougal? Like, this cow is big but far away, and this cow is small and a toy and close? Do you really think you could see New York? Under no circumstances you're going to see it. It's too small. You're nuts. But in their mind, because there is no perspective in the Earth curve maths, they don't account for it when they reverse the situation from their begging the question calculation that there is Earth curve that excludes perspective. When they say, well, what happens if the Earth was flat? If it was flat, based on my assumption that there's no perspective, then we'd see New York from Ireland. No, Dumbo, your Earth curve maths didn't have perspective. Reality does. In fact, it's taken that effect and called it Earth curve. So the limitation that it would disappear from your view because it got too small is pretty much exactly where you think Earth curve's getting in the way of it.
Think of how silly that sounds, that you should see Ireland from New York. I can't see 300 feet down the road.
But that's because of a
People are
drinking-related
crazy.
problem, isn't it?
What's that?
Nothing.
I remember Timmy Clown coming in here one time and saying that nonsense to us. Then I asked him, if there was like heavy fog out there, he like, I don't know, like, no. But, all right, thanks. Just that Earth curve isn't the only reason that thing is there. People are nuts.
Okay.
The horizon in the globe model, the horizon, is that Earth curve, Nathan?
Yeah, in the Earth curve maths it is.
Okay. Then it has an address. It's 1.22. Now, the horizon is also a baseline called 0. And directly above you is your zenith. So that's your 90. So your 90 and the horizon, 90 times 60 nautical miles is 5,400 nautical miles when the star or the sun is on the horizon. Now, if you just say, all right, let's just say it's 45 degrees above the horizon. Well, that's 2,700 nautical miles. This 1.22 is the address of Earth curve. And yet, the star is not even near Earth curve at 45 degrees above the horizon. And it's 2,700 nautical miles away from you. The baseline destroys them.
I would say that, hold on a sec. I would say that the Earth curve mass and the globe model have nothing to do with each other.
I just want to add that horizon being called, having an address that's copyrighted before Arwen steals it from Brian in 2 weeks.
If you go far back enough, and since I'm twice your age, you lose.
I think there was an overarching point that John was trying to make that nobody picked up on. Or maybe not.
Right. The confusion of the Rayleigh criterion with something we consider Earth curve, right? And they call Earth curve mass, has nothing to do with the actual globe model. When you take the celestial sphere flat plane model and apply Habersign formula and transform it into the globe, they're not connected in any way.
But if Jessup ordered Santiago to not be touched,
I was thinking the same thing.
why would he be touched then? I don't know.
What John's saying is similar to saying when the globers go through the refraction tables or Snell's law, it has absolutely nothing to do with 7/6 of the radius terrestrial refraction. Now, when they take an elevation angle measurement to Polaris and use it to derive latitude lines and convert what is essentially a flat Earth measurement onto a spherical surface by way of the Habersign, that process, leaving you with the quote-unquote globe model in that respect, that would be the globe burger inside the celestial sphere has nothing to do with the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, which is merely a derivation of a claim that has the same origin, globe Earth, about what the horizon will do when it's Earth curve, as opposed to how the globe surface is derived with angle measurements to Polaris. Those two things aren't connected, is John's point, in any way, unless you can show me beyond the title, Earth curve, and Earth curve being an aspect of heliocentrism. These two models don't have any conformity. There's no connection between them. There's no link between them. You show me the link. You're right, John. I'm agreeing.
There is none. Yeah, there is none. It's two separate claims that in ways contradict each other.
Yeah.
Just so people know, New York's tallest building is the One World Trade Center at 541 meters. You won't be able to see that at about you won't be able to see that at about 120 kilometers away. So it'll start to becoming too small to see at about that.
You beautiful bastard. So, that's just, I can feel the waves of relief coming over me, thanks to Brian. So my irritation gets really poignant when someone starts telling you, within the straw man context of what globe earthers claim, to refute it, that is, what we should or shouldn't see. And their claim is going to be presumably as follows. Based on globe earth maths, they won't disclaim that. We shouldn't see this building because Earth curve should be in the way. I phrased it that way to make it absolutely abundantly clear how that phraseology from a flat earther is actually interpretable. We should not see beyond what we are seeing because we should have Earth curve in the way. How irritating to hear that come from a flat earther, I feel. Maybe just me. Yeah? No. We see what we see. The reason we see it is because we've got eyeballs. There's no other justification. Well, Brian's just defeated that. And I like it. I can't say that anymore, can I, Brian? Because you've got a feasible, reasonable, demonstrable, justifiable way of phrasing the same thing. Nah, we should not see beyond this distance because it's beyond the angular limitation and aperture limitations of your eyeball. That's a perfectly reasonable assertion to make in terms of what we can and can't see based on the limitations of your viewing equipment, your eyeballs. Well said, Brian. I like it a lot because I can get right behind that rather than getting irritated by people saying, we shouldn't see this far. What do you mean we shouldn't see this far? You are seeing that far.
Well, what people have to take into account is that this is like that is a scenario where you're purely working off of a totally horizontal plane and there is nothing in the way. There is no air. You're not at sea level air. You can't often see a boat that's moved away from you a mile or two. You start not being able to see the boat. It starts becoming miraged, all this kind of stuff. So, like, even these, what we're talking about here is even fantasy because that's perfect situations that don't exist in reality. In reality, there is going to be temperature, there's going to be air, there's going to be mirages and swells on the ocean. So all these things will stop you from seeing New York. But it doesn't matter because at about 150 kilometers away, like the New York's tallest building, and this is not even taking into account visual occultation, which would stop you from seeing it in the first place. You won't be able to see it. You just won't be able to see it. Under perfect situations, that would be only a dot on your horizon.
Right. Okay,
Brian,
so just a quick shout out to
sorry.
who says, so at Godzilla37 at space_audits #08 : how much math became reality? 42 views. Emoji shaking my head. I have no idea how to decode that, but thank you very much indeed for the super chat.
Just to add on real quick to Brian's point, remember some of the rebuttals we got to the Black Swan? I mean, these are the people who think that if there were no atmosphere, we would see less. Remember that?
Yeah, they're saying that when you have severe refraction, well, that means you can see the horizon miles and miles and miles away. You know, the hill that's supposed to be getting in your way geometrically, blocking the oil rigs, that's now projected behind the oil rigs. Okay, so what you're saying is this effect that's creating refraction, normally making visibility worse, is making you see for miles and miles and creating the illusion that a hill has projected itself behind something it's supposed to be blocking. Wow, this refraction's amazing. What's the formula for it? Oh, the formula for it is debunked by the fact that I now say we have a refracted horizon because the horizon needs to be geometric to acquire the R in the terrestrial refraction assertion I make in heliocentrism, because it's got an R in it.
Yeah, and the only reason we don't see the geometric horizon at 1.22 times the square root of the observer sighted feet at 1 foot is because, oh, we have atmosphere. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, this goes to Brian's point. They can make 7/6R anything because they just flatten it out longer when on the days you see more.
Yeah, but you're going to need R for that. Right, should we go on to
for the
Sabine?
first instance.
Let's move on to Sabine. So we've got a video that we're going to do reactions to. Now, I've been shared this by Brian. Normally, I'm very complimentary to 10th for his excellent choice of videos, but Brian hasn't actually watched this. So we only found that out in the pre-show. But there we go. The 5 most promising ways to quantize gravity. Should be interesting. So we're going to give this a bash. And as I've not watched it and neither of any of the panel, I don't know how this is going to go, but feel free to pipe up if you've got anything to add.
I've come up with to quantize gravity. But before I get to that, I want to tell you why it matters. That we do not have a theory of quantum gravity is currently one of the biggest unsolved problems in the foundations of physics.
Okay, there's the first problem. If you haven't got a theory for it, why are you talking about it? If it's not a theory, what the hell is it? Because you'd have something in scientific validity if it was physics. Physics is dealing with the physical. And if you're talking about science, i.e. having theories, then your theory would have come from an experiment, which would have come from a hypothesis, which would have come from observing something in nature. So you've got none of the above, but yet we're talking about it. Quantum gravity, that is. Yeah, that's you stealing valor from actual science, isn't it?
A lot of people, including many of my colleagues, seem to think that a theory of quantum gravity will remain an academic curiosity without...
Theories, to be labelled as such, have come from the outcome of a validated hypothesis test, aka experiment, after observing something in nature that you want to know the cause of. So what? It's always going to elude us, the theory? You're about 5 steps ahead of yourself. Let's start at the beginning, love. What's the phenomena we're talking about? Quantum gravity. Oh, right, I see. So a bastardization of something with scientific validity, that's quantum, mashed in with an Einsteinian 4th-dimensional space-time bending. But you think a theory will elude you? Yeah, a phenomenon will elude you, love.
Practical relevance. I think they are...
Practical relevance? Why the hell are we discussing this then? So this has no practical relevance. What are we? 28 seconds into a 7-minute video, and this is of no practical relevance. Oh, God! Quick! I'll tie myself down for the next 7 minutes to listen to this horse shit then.
Are wrong. That's because whatever solves this problem will tell us...
So what problem? We've got no phenomena, no theory. The scientists, in quotes, are saying that there's no practical application for it. Suddenly there's a problem. What? I don't see any problem here. Just a lot of wasting of everybody's time.
Something about quantum theory, and that is the theory on which all modern electronic devices run.
No, that's quantum mechanics. Yeah, that's actual science. This has sod all to do with gravity.
Like the ones on which you are watching this video. Maybe it will take 100 years for quantum gravity to find a practical application.
Right, what is it? You've just told us there's no theory for it, so there's no scientific experimentation for it, so there's no hypothesis for it, so there's no phenomena for it, but you're telling us it might have a practical application in spite of the disagreeing scientists that say it doesn't have any. What, this non-theory that you don't have and won't have for 100 years potentially? But you're worried about the practical application for it? What you're doing is taking something that is superseding you. Yeah, in your heliocentric nonsense with gravity. That's quantum theory, scientifically validated, that's produced results. Stuff that you can do with it. For all you science deniers, actual science deniers out there, go and look at what a semiconductor is. She's stealing the valor from actual science to bolster her maybe have something useful in 100 years non-theory with gravity smashed in, and then talking about computers. How dare you? Got sod all to do with Einsteinian gravity, and you're mashing it up with something that's actually provided useful stuff in the world because the science behind it, actual science behind it, isn't going to lend any credit to this crap that you're about to spurt to the audience.
Or maybe it will even take 1,000 years.
Maybe, but we can still waste 7 minutes talking about it now.
But I'm sure that understanding...
Go on, John.
I was going to say, you can never combine gravity with quantum mechanics because it would contradict the uncertainty principle.
Correct. They're completely incompatible. It supersedes it. In the same way, Newton was superseded by Einstein. Not that there was anything in practical application or physicality that Einstein had to offer, but in their rhetoric, it superseded it. This matter-of-factly supersedes the incompatible Einsteinian fourth-dimensional space-time bending nonsense.
I find it funny that she would say something like, "Oh, what I'm about to talk about has no practical relevance in 100 years, and then maybe even in 1,000 years." So it's like, if you're listening to what this lady's saying, it's like, oh, so you're about to tell me a cool story that has no relevance in reality. Why should I even continue to listen to this video?
Exactly. So it's just a big fat waste of time then.
Yeah. She snatched the whole own wig off in the beginning.
Yep.
Oh, what I'm about to talk about has no practical relevance. Oh, okay, thanks. I can go do something productive then.
No, it's the rumpus's
So silly.
trick. Disclaim it on the front cover in the first opening introduction about how useless and impractical and worth nothing this is. Oh, but by the way, the thing I've slapped on top of my out-of-date superseded rhetoric of Einsteinian gravity, that definitely had practical applications. You're using them right now. Yeah, you're not going to, actually use any of that useful practical technology that came from the science of quantum in your Einsteinian gravity. It's never going to happen, and you're disclaiming it right in the introduction that it's never going to happen for 1,000 years or ever because they're incompatible.
nature better will not forever remain a merely academic speculation. Before I go on, I want to be...
Okay, academic speculation and science are just so far apart from one another. In the field of science, you study natural phenomena and establish the cause of it through systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis so you can form a theory about it. Now, academic speculation, on the other hand, is meaningless tosh from pipe-smoking idiots, worth about as much as this 7-minute video is going to be worth to you as an audience member if you watched it without us critiquing it.
Clear that quantizing gravity by itself...
Sorry, quantizing gravity? Is this a musical term?
...is not the problem.
That's where her problem will come in. That because it is a pseudo-geometry, every point will have to be defined from for each quantized state, and that will contradict the uncertainty principle. So yeah, it will never fit together because of that.
We can and have quantized gravity the same way that
we have quantized gravity. Show me gravity. Now show me its quantized state. Oh, you can't show me gravity? What's that? You mean the bending fourth-dimensional Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian four-space-time dimension can't be shown? Well, why is it being asserted that you can show it and can show it quantized? You can't.
Quantize the other interactions.
Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you see the way every time one of these people, these astrophysicists or astronomers, whatever, come out with these videos, they never define gravity. They just throw this word out there, and as if it's like, everyone knows what it is. It's like, do we? Because at present there's 4 gravities. 4. Quantum gravity is only one of them. Which one are you talking about? What are you talking about?
The problem is that the theory which one gets this way breaks down.
Theory? What theory? The one that you won't have for 100 years, maybe 1,000? Which theory are we talking about now? Because quantum theory hasn't anything to do with Einstein's gravity. But you're just throwing it in like we've got a mishmash of theories here. I'm sure one of them's going to be the theory that I'll be talking about. It doesn't matter if it is or it isn't when I get to the gravity bit, because we're all under the same impression that we're talking about science and its validity.
down at high energies, and therefore it cannot be how nature works fundamentally.
The way you establish how nature works fundamentally is to perform experimentation to establish cause and effect reasoning based on your systematic experimentation that's come from your hypothesis, that's come from your observed natural phenomena. And as we keep pointing out, there's nothing for gravity in this regard.
This naive quantization is called...
Go on.
Did she just say basically what I'm talking about has no relation to reality? Is that what she just said? Could you rewind like 20 seconds?
Yeah, sure.
Itself is not the problem. We can and have quantized gravity the same way that we quantize the other interactions. The problem is that the theory which one gets this way breaks down at high energies, and therefore it cannot be how nature works fundamentally.
Cannot be how nature works fundamentally. But let me continue to talk about it for the next 7 minutes.
Yeah, well caught. So what she's essentially saying is the description in quantized gravity can't be how nature works. All right. You see, you're a bit arse about face when it comes to science, because science starts with you seeing how nature is occurring and wondering how it's working that way. Not seeing a theory that isn't a theory, trying to describe it and saying you can't, or it might not have any practical application, and then just saying, well, that's not how nature works. No, you've got it completely the wrong way around.
Well,
nature still goes on quite happily.
This is exactly what Einstein did when he said, we got to come up with something because mass doesn't attract mass. So he comes up with 4D space-time and changes the whole thing of gravity, which doesn't exist in the beginning. So this lady comes on and says, you know, we got this theory, okay, loosely used, and it may take us 100 years, but we're going to keep guessing until what? Until the next Einstein moment when you realize you had nothing in the beginning, and then you're going to change the nothing you had at the beginning?
It's a total lie. We've got this theory. What? Colloquial theory? Watson and Holmes theory? All right, but you're talking within the science, within the context of the science and the useful applications it's had within computing. So you're talking about semiconductors and how they've come from science, right? Quantum mechanics. All right. So we're definitely within the context of science when you say theory, love. You haven't got one for this. And you're disclaiming how you haven't got one and won't get one for 100 years, maybe even 1,000. But yet you're still babbling about it. It's an absolute outrage. She's just lying when she says she's got this theory. What theory?
Well,
The one they're disagreeing about is not a theory. Go on, John, and then we'll shout out JMails24.
When she said that high energy states, right? But she's specifically talking about quantum mechanics and any idea of a geometry, pseudo or otherwise, where those quantum states are known. You know, it just doesn't happen. So there's she understands that gravity doesn't fit with this, and she keeps stating it. I don't know why she's trying to push it together like this so desperately.
A couple of quick shout outs. So JMails24 says, sounds like you guys just don't understand what Sabine is saying. Probably just need a good 4 more hours or so to work this out. Thank you very much for the super chat. Flat Earth Travolta says 4 more hours. Nah, I'm afraid not. There's only 100 people watching, which is pretty appalling.
Yeah, it's because you jump the gun all the time.
It's because I jumped the gun with it welcoming people to Flat Earth. I'd think not. Meanwhile, share the show. Smash that share button. We continue?
One second, I'd like to say something
Yeah,
about her, what she's at. What she's at is what the rest of them are at, which is they're trying to move away from Einstein because they know it's total and utter rubbish, and people are going to figure out that because they have academia saying it's rubbish without saying it's rubbish, and they're trying to marry themselves into quantum mechanics to try and gain some validity for this absolute horse manure that they're going to be trying to feed the public in the future. And they're desperate. That's what it is. They need another Einstein. That's the problem. They need another Einstein. Einstein came along when when Newton didn't do them anymore. They needed Einstein. Now they need someone else because Einstein is now becoming Newton.
Brian, I think you're right because my son has been talking about this quantum mechanics, and he knows Einstein is full of shit, to be plain and simple.
This naive quantization is called perturbatively quantized gravity, and it was worked out in the 1960s by Feynman and DeWitt and some others. Perturbatively quantized gravity is today widely believed to be an approximation to whatever.
It's believed to be an approximation, is it? Wow. I mean, this sounds so far away from actual scientific validation, it's untrue. And that's because it is untrue.
Is the correct theory.
Back to using it as a theory again. I paused too soon. Go ahead, whoever.
Hold on. Is science believed to be? I thought it was proven once you validate it with an experiment.
That's correct. Science is empirical. Belief not required. Only one outcome possible based on the methodology employed. So the hypothesis construction leaves you with only one outcome upon varying that which you assume causes the effect you're studying. So if you vary something that you presume causes the effect you're studying, and it does not cause it, then the null is validated. It has a tick placed next to it. So the statement that's validated is if A, not B. You varied A, B did not happen. Therefore, tick. Well, the alternative hypothesis and alternative result in this case would be if A, then B. Now you varied A and B did not happen. It violates the law of non-contradiction to have both A causing B and not causing B. You can't both cause something to happen and not cause it to happen at the same time. Only one thing can be true. Hence, when you vary A to see if it does or does not cause B, the outcome is empirically validated. Either it causes B or it does not cause B. And once you find out that it does not cause B, that will always be the case. Or once you find out that upon variation of A, it does cause B, that will always be the case. It won't suddenly stop being the cause. Hence empiricism. There's no belief in that process. What I just described in terms of varying A to see if it caused B, that's an experiment. Once you've validated that A does cause B, you can form a theory. What she's talking about is completely devoid of any scientific empiricism or validity. That's why she's talking about belief.
So really, the problem is not just to quantize gravity per se.
How'd you do that? Show us gravity so you can show us quantizing it. This problem is the end of the claim for you. Go on.
She said, and the problem is we can't quantize. Whose problem is that again? The one telling the story?
It's not a problem, it's a conclusion. It's the end. John's already pointed it out about 3 times, right? This isn't some problem open for discussion. It's the end.
It's sort of like a concession.
Yeah, exactly, Neil. It's the concession. But instead, like any good heliocentrist, they don't take a problem that's absolutely defying their religious faith in a heliocentric world as a defying point that ends their heliocentric faith. They take it as a discussion point that's a problem. I mean, take the Seleninian impossible heliocentric eclipse. Well, that's just a talking point, right? We'll just label it that. We'll call it the impossible eclipse. Why? Well, because it doesn't work in our model. Isn't that fascinating? It doesn't undo their worldview. It just becomes a talking point. Let's discuss how this doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible, but look, there it is.
Yeah. Only impossible for them. Only a problem for you. Only a problem for gravity. Not a problem for computing. That still ticks along quite nicely based on the science that got us it. But the gravity problem was never worried about. It wasn't a problem for the computers. It's just a problem for you and your heliocentric nonsense.
You want to quantize it and get a theory that does not break down at high energies.
So theories don't break down at high energies, right? A theory is based on a scientifically validated experiment. That's what a theory is. So it's not like your theory, which is your explanation thereafter, after your empirical result, breaks down at high energies. This is absurd doublespeak gobbledygook.
Because energies are proportional to frequencies.
Really? What's that got to do with theories of quantum gravity? You seem to be juxtaposing two different things. Descriptions of theories that aren't scientifically validated with physically occurring phenomena that does have juxtaposable, influenceable, cause and effect reasoning that's given us technology.
Physicists like to refer to high energies as the ultraviolet or just the UV. Therefore,
No, that's just a way we describe light after seeing its interference pattern, aka diffraction. Meaningless to quantum gravity.
the theory of quantum gravity that we look for is said to
You
be
don't look for theories. You experience effects and try to explain them by way of systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis.
UV complete. Now, let me go through the 5 most
Is
popular.
it just me, or is she trying to science concrete nouns? Who cares?
Yeah,
What we
it does.
describe these things as.
It's
all
not just you.
Go on, Brian.
I'm saying it's not just you. She's trying to make science out of anything.
Right.
Approaches to quantum gravity. First, string theory.
So first, a new theory. No, you've got a point 1 next to this. No, to get to string theory, if you're going to imply that it's science, we're going to need to see a naturally occurring phenomena and the presumed cause of the effect formulated next to that phenomena that you observed that you want to explain, and a null. And then the person that actually varied that which you assume caused the phenomena, so you can call it an experiment. And if that experiment has, and it must, a valid outcome, the theory. What's this? Oh, it's colloquial bullshitters talking about stuff that doesn't work. That kind of theory, not science.
The most widely known and still the most popular attempt to get a UV complete theory for quantum gravity.
It's just nonsense. Getting complete theories. Theories based on experimentation. But not about bullshitters with pipes. Having a little chit-chat about things that don't work properly in their religious belief of a world that doesn't exist. That's a heliocentric globe Earth, with a gravitational 4th dimension that isn't experienceable in physics. And how that non-physical, non-experienceable, 4th dimensional realm might work with things that have actually been put into practical application like computers when it comes to quantum mechanics.
Is string theory. The idea of string theory is that instead of talking
The idea of string theory, here we are, already into the weasel words.
about particles and quantizing them, you take strings and quantize those.
Oh, I see. So instead of particles and things we experience in the physical realm, we take theoretical strings. Well, what kind of strings? I've got some string right next to me. Let's see what we're going to do with this string that I've got here.
Amazingly enough, this automatically has the consequence that the strings exchange a force which has the same properties as the...
Whoa. Hold on a second. I'm holding my strings and they exchange a force that looks like gravity. What kind of strings are these? Are they Spider-Man magical strings? What strings are these? These don't sound like any strings I've ever experienced. Are these bullshit strings? Are these made-up strings? Are these just being called strings when they're actually in the figment of someone's imagination because they behave like a non-force force that you can think of as a force we now call gravity that's actually the bending 4th dimensional space-time conceived in Einstein's maths? Are they the kind of strings we're talking about? Oh, obviously. I'll put down my strings, shall I? And let this waffling, nonsensical bullshitter talk about her strings that don't exist in physical reality.
the gravitational force. This was discovered in the 1970s.
What was discovered? How was it discovered? What was being experienced to be discoverable?
At the time, it got physicists very excited.
What did? You say your description was discovered. How can a description of strings behaving like gravity, which is not any kind of string that anybody on Earth has ever experienced ever, how was this discovered to be excited about? Because you missed that bit out.
However, in the past
Sorry, whoa. However, it's like a segue, like a moving away from. your description of a discovery and how excited people got, what, you're not going to qualify that or quantify that or justify that or prove that or evidence it in any way, shape or form. You're just going to move on to the however of the point that we now accept. We definitely don't.
Several problems have appeared in
Oh, right. Well, based on that acceptance that we didn't give you, there's problems. Well, these aren't our problems, are they, love?
theory that were fixed, and this has made the theory increasingly contrived.
Theories don't get contrived. They're based on actual, validated, systematic experimentation. That's experiments that have had not a theory come first, a theory come after, the validation.
You can hear all about this in my earlier video.
Or if it was real science, you could develop things like computers from it. You know, actual science benefits mankind. As opposed to raises questions, causes problems for religions.
It has never been proved that string theory is indeed UV complete.
It's meaningless tosh. It's never been proved what? That we've got strings? Show us strings. Not strings. I'm just stupid for thinking that strings are strings. You mean the conceptual, non-physical strings that were discovered? No, they weren't. This is all complete nonsense.
Second, loop quantum gravity.
Oh, right. Loop quantum gravity. This sounds like the biggest shit sandwich ever. Quantum, what, the bit that gave us computing and semiconductors? What, loop? All right, I'll grab my string again and I'll make a loop. Gravity you haven't shown us or defined. So this is just a mishmash of nonsense stealing valor from actual scientific validity.
Loop quantum gravity is often named as the biggest competitor of string theory.
So gravity, rather than being a non-force force that we can think of as a force that's actually the fourth dimensional space-time bending in Einstein's mathematics, is now just a competitor in a conceptual race against a competing quote-unquote theory that has no physics behind it. Oh, wow. So it's just men with pipes arguing about nonsense then.
But this comparison is somewhat misleading. String theory is not just a theory for quantum gravity. It is also supposed to unify the other interactions.
Oh, really? So where computers offered useful application to humanity, this will qualify other interactions within other theories. I mean, that sounds really useful. Maybe we can turn that into a keyboard or something.
Loop quantum gravity, on the other hand, is only about quantizing gravity.
Therefore, we'll get a mouse out of it or a keyboard out of it, maybe a monitor out of it. Yeah, unlike actual quantum that gave us useful things. This won't develop into anything useful then. Maybe it'll develop into something useful in 100 years when you get an explanation, but you won't have actually looked at any phenomena. So we're not going to get anything practical or physical out of it. That's for damn sure. You disclaimed that within the 30 seconds of opening up this video, didn't you now?
It works
Nathan,
by
it's supposed to unify it, but it doesn't, of course. But she leaves that part out.
Oh, that's a problem. But that's definitely going to open up more discussion, Arwin. That's very useful.
discretizing space in terms of a network, and then using integrals around small loops to describe the space. Hence,
Really? What, Einsteinian fourth dimension space? That's not physics, though, is it?
the name. In this network, the nodes represent volumes, and the links between nodes represent the areas of the surfaces where the volumes meet.
Oh, I see. So this area behind her would be space. And the nodes, are volumes. I see. I wonder, given that these are volumes in space, and you're alluding to this being the space of the stars above our head, right? Yeah, volume would be an area that gas could fill, wouldn't it? Like natural law? Like gas dispersion into available volumes? These would be volumes, you say? Oh, wow, it's amazing. Normally, we have a real job getting fundamentalist religious globe-believing zealots to concede that the area above our head claimed to be an infinite sky vacuum is a volume that gas could fill. But definitely, it's a node, aka volumes. All right, well, that immediately defies gas law, because the sky isn't going to be a volume that gas could fill, because gas would fill it in line with entropic law. So this is off to a very terrible start in terms of, you know, aligning with the original problems of heliocentrism, and you progress beyond them because problems stop being problems when they become discussion points, and we move on and rename nodes volumes, ignoring the fact that that's a massive problem for heliocentric space. given that we're all breathing gas pressure.
Right. What's the container wall?
I will rename that nodes also. Just a different type of node. I'll put nodes, colon. Why not?
Quantum gravity is about as old as string theory.
Really? Did you show us where that was excitably discovered?
It solves the problem of combining general relativity and...
So it's not really about physical discovery in nature, like science. It's about solving problems within heliocentric religious rhetoric. I see.
Quantum mechanics to one consistent theory.
Why? Quantum mechanics has already given us the useful things like computers. Why do we need to unify anything within a heliocentric umbrella or between the nodes of the volumes when it's already offering us useful things like computing? I mean, this just seems like a way of working around your heliocentric incompatibility with quantum. Go ahead.
Well, how is it compatible?
It isn't.
I mean, she just says, oh, it's compatible with that. Oh, really? What about it is compatible with what about quantum mechanics then? But I bet she's not getting into that.
No, she disclaimed it immediately that it's completely incompatible. You just weren't here, Arwin. It was one of her first, it was her opener within the first 30 seconds.
Oh.
Yeah, she said this has no practical relevance for the next 100 years or maybe the next 1,000.
Who
So
knows?
she's talking nonsense.
So much discussion that can go on in the meantime, though.
So it's not relevant, but it is compatible.
Yep.
No, she explained why it was incompatible as well.
Yep. She's giving us the end, the conclusion, the like death throes or whatever you want to call it for heliocentric gravity, and saying all the problems of how we can't sandwich this into the thing that gave us useful practical things like computers. That's what she said. It's nuts, really.
But it has remained...
You know what it is? It's her own cognitive dissonance. This is her own channel, right? So this is the spew that she can put out when she's trying to square her own circles in her own mind. So she's trying to overcome these problems and explain them. Probably because she's trying to overcome them in her own mind. She's not expecting any of her audience to actually understand the double-speak contradictions that she's laying down. But she's trying to square them in her own mind, I would suspect, given it's her own channel.
Yeah, Nathan, can you go to
that
mass...
Sabine lady? Sorry,
Yeah.
Tom.
She's a lovely fella.
Sabine? Oh, so this is the same lady that thinks we obviously live on a globe because somebody invented glasses. This is the same lady. Okay.
Right, I've got your slide up for, is it Einstein's thought experiment?
I went to her channel and pulled up 3, or she's got more than 3, but these are 3 other videos that include some kind of reference to Einstein. So the first one, do you see her standing with a picture of Einstein to her side?
Yep.
It says expansion over his head.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the more, when you go video, you hit more. Let's just read these 3 so you can see what's going on here. Check out the math physics course that I mentioned, etc., etc. Einstein's theory of general relativity has made countless correct predictions, and yet physicists are constantly trying to prove it wrong. Why? What would be good to prove Einstein wrong, and how could it be done? In this video, I go through the most promising experiments that physicists currently work on, which could prove Einstein wrong. Next one. Now, this one's quite interesting because of the thought experiment and a picture of Einstein. It says Albert Einstein was neither the first nor the last to use thought experiments in his research, but Einstein, like no other before or after him, was a master at using his mind to explore regimes that real experiments could not explore. At least at his time. Einstein was also remarkably successful in many of his thought experiments, notably the elevator experiment and the EPR experiment, and now real experiments. In this video, I explained the thought experiments behind Maxwell's demon, Einstein's elevator, and EPR experiment, and the black hole information loss paradox. I also explained the relevance of thought experiments in physics today. Next slide. Special relativity and general relativity. Einstein's theory of general relativity tells us gravity is caused by the curvature of space-time. It is a remarkable theory that has been confirmed by countless observations, such as gravitational lensing, light deflection on the sun, redshift in the gravitational potential, black holes and their shadows, and gravitational waves. However, We already know that general relativity cannot be quite right because it does not fit together with another well-confirmed theory, that is quantum mechanics. To resolve this tension, physicists think that we need a theory of quantum gravity. She's doing thought experiments. Everyone's doing thought experiments.
Love it. With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, including Retro Bill, who says, FAD will be eating its words in 1,000 years when this starts making sense. Thank you very much indeed, Retro Bill, for smashing the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either after show. Another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely